Hello once again, this is Steve Longren, Senior Director of Architecture for MAS200, and we're going to go through another customizer demo. Today what we're going to take a look at is some of the advanced field settings that are available since the 4.2 release, as well as put together a little demonstration of how we might be able to use Customizer along with BIE to do some a routing approval system through a sales order system. So one thing I want to start off with, beforehand I went ahead, since we in previous sessions have basically gone through how to set up UDTs, I've gone ahead and set those up already. So a couple things I've set up is a customer type UDI, or UDT. As well, I also have a sales order approval routing, and that's just some fields there. And I'll show you how we're going to use those in a bit together with sales order entry. The first thing what I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time on the advanced field settings feature. So I'm going to go ahead and call up user find field in table maintenance. And one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the customer table. And what you'll notice when you double click on customer table, and prior to 4.2 it would just go right into edit fields. Now, starting with 4.2, we added this advanced field settings. And I'm going to go ahead and go into that. What this allows you to do is take standard MAS200 fields and alter the behavior, validations, default values, even required fields. So I'm just going to come in here and show you some things that you can do. And it's just a second here, and I'll show you what we're going to do. So in customer maintenance, we've always had this field called sort field and customer type, and they're kind of free-form fields. And I've asked some customers during some site visits if they use, and they say, well, not really, because you can't really control what goes in there, and if somebody forgets to fill them in, it's not really useful. The original intent of those was for some printing and maybe some sales analysis and filtering. But because there was no validation on them, people weren't using them. So what I'm going to do here is in user find field and table maintenance, I'm on the advanced field setting. I'm going to call up that customer type field. And what I can do or not. So now, even though MAS200 out of the box doesn't require that field, now the customer can make that field required. And another important distinction is you can set these settings up by user and company. So I don't have security set up, but if you wanted to say, hey, this field is required for the order entry clerk, whoever that happens to be, you can set that up. Or maybe you want a field that's required, but only required for a given company. I know this has been a problem when we first released 4.10. Or even 4.0, people would set up a required user-defined field, but only put it on the screen for one of their companies, and then they go into another company, try to save a record, and they'd say, hey, you got a required field, but there was nowhere for the user to enter it. So the way we get around that today is in user-defined field maintenance, you would not set that field up as required and indicate that that field actually is required for that company. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this off. Now you see here I got a little lock system. There's a lock next to this uppercase, and it'll display a tooltip briefly to explain why that's locked, or you can just click on that button and it gives you a little dialog. And here it says the uppercase attribute for customer type is already selected by default and cannot be cleared. So we will let you take something that's not uppercase, like a city, and force it to be uppercase if you want to. But if we've already set it's uppercase, that's normally because we're going to do some validation with it. And we don't want uppercase A1 to be different than lowercase a1. So you'll see these locks periodically, and some things can only be set for all users and all companies. So if you're trying to do something for a single user and company, then it'll explain why you can't do that. So just something to keep in mind when you're going through here. So I'm going to flip over to the validation tab. One thing I can do is now give it a default value, something you could not do prior to advanced field settings with the new business framework modules. There were some support cases that came in when we released the framework modules where people used to be able to go into the screen definitions and put in an initial value, and that would serve as a default value. But that really does not work in the framework modules because it's all done at the business object level. And although you could have put that default value into the screen, it wouldn't actually follow through to the business object. So this is a way to give you back that same functionality in the business framework. So you got the ability to put in default values. So I can just go ahead and say, hey, my default value is going to be A6. So I can put in a range of values if I want to say, hey, it can be A1 through A9 if I want to validate it against a user-defined table. So since this is a 4-byte string, if you look in the dictionary or the TRSG for the data file formats, you'll see it's a 4-byte string. What's important to note is when you set up this user-defined table, it also has to have a 4-byte key. From previous examples, I think you'll see that the default key size when you're setting up a UDT, user-defined table, is 10. So you want to make sure that if you want to validate it against a standard MAS200 field, that you understand what that field size is. So anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and accept that and close it down. So now, without even going in to modify the screen, I can come in here and see that now I have a lookup on this field, and it's got validation in there as well. So if I try to type in 9U, I'll get a nod on file defined table. So now we can make some meaningful entries there and do some good reporting off of it. So I'm also going to jump into the customizer because let's say I want the description to show up there. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my Control F9 button, which brings me into the customizer selection. I'm going to hit the Add Field, and right next to the customer type, I'm going to drag on a control. And now because I said that the customer type validates against user-defined table, that now becomes an available data source for me. And now I can take that description and display it there. And let me get rid of this label. And we'll make this a height of 1. Get rid of those scroll bars. Okay, so once I've done that, and I come back in here, and I start browsing through, now I've got my description showing up for those guys. Okay. So anyway, that's just a quick demo of one of the things you can do with user-defined field and table maintenance with the advanced field settings. If we jump back in there, there's some other things I'd like to show you. So let's say for sales orders, whenever we generate a sales order, we want to, I'll go back into the advanced field settings. Let's just say the order status for a particular user. So I could do this for a user, or in user maintenance, if you set up security, there's what's called a customization group. So you can have users, multiple users that belong to that group. So you could have like a salesperson order entry group, and you could assign these advanced field settings to that group. I'm going to go over to the validation here and say, okay, here's the default value, but for this particular user, in this case, I'm saving it for all users, but you get the idea. I can save that by specific user or user group in combination with company. But I always want those orders to come in on hold. So I can do that. Now I've got control over different users entering into the system. of how that's going to show up. So now you've got the ability to make sure that order doesn't get printed until somebody flips that status, right? There's some of the other fields in there as well. I'm just going to go ahead and edit this one as well. So we covered the application required. Actually, we covered them all. So there's really not much else to that. Like I said, use these to see why you can't change it, and you can take advantage of those new features. And by the way, all of these can be packaged up from your office and sent over to your customers in a customizer export routine. The advanced field settings, you have the ability to take a standard MAS200 field and validate it against a user-defined table. Now there are restrictions, for instance, like if terms code already validates against a terms code table, that's what it's going to continue to validate against. You'll get one of those lock symbols next to it. But if you have a free-form text field that you, like the FOB field, for instance, that you want to put some validation on, whether it's a list of values in a that you type in or based off of a table that you can allow users to maintain that data in, you have that ability. You can also set the required field by user, group of users, and or company, and then forced to be uppercase. So I know that's been an issue for some city stuff for mailings on some stuff. So to continue on with the demo, what we're going to do now is get into a little routing approval system that we're going to build. I already have this approval routing table, and I just added a bunch of code. So we've got approved, credit, maybe it's credit check, return for more info, it's pending, or it's under review. So what we're going to do is go back into user-defined field and table maintenance, and then on our sales order header table, we're going to add this routing field. So I right-click, go into Edit Fields, and we'll call this, let's fix that up there. Okay, and once again, this can be a manual entry because we're entering it into the system. And for validation purposes, we're going to validate that against our routing approval. Now for default value, I'm going to put that at pending because I want all new orders to default into pending. Okay, once I do that, update the dictionaries, then I can go into customizer selection. We'll add that field to the sales order header. So I'm going to exit out of user-defined table maintenance and go into customizer selection. So I can open up the sales order tree node, get to sales order entry. I'm going to go ahead and put this on the main doc. Actually, I'm going to put this on the header. I'm sorry. So I have something called P header and P header W. So what that is for, and we haven't covered this yet. So let me just go into sales order entry. Hopefully, you're all familiar with this feature. If I go over to the Lines tab, I have the ability to hit this button here that's going to change my view. What that's going to do is move my secondary grid next to my primary grid. It allows you to see more fields at once, right? So you can see basically everything that's in there. So in order to do that, we really have two definitions of each of these panels. One's called, P header, and the wide version that you're seeing here is P header W. So if you're doing a customization for your end user and you want that field available with those panels. So for the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and put it on P header. Accept that. And I don't have a whole lot of room here, so could make some extra room, but I'm a little lazy. So I'm going to go ahead and, where can I put this? Just put it right there. And maybe we'll move that up top so it's right on top of it. Move it over a little, maybe to 75, and make it 11. Okay, so that doesn't look too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now what's going to happen is when I enter a new order, that routing field gets defaulted to pending. So a couple things that you could do here is if you want to put some security on this, you could set up a different screen definition for a specific group of users and have this field disabled for them and only allow maybe the supervisor that have access to this. So that's something that let's just go ahead and add a quick order here. Okay, I'm gonna take a quick break here and I'll update a bunch of other fields, so hold on. Okay, back. So I went ahead and assigned all of those orders to a given status. So now what I want to show you is I can come into here, Business Insights Explorer, and come into my sales order view and set up a few inboxes. So the first thing I'm going to do is right-click on any of these order headers and choose the column settings. I'm going to go ahead and add my routing field. And accept that. So now what I can do is I can group by that routing code and see what I've got. So right off I can say I've got actually one with not anything because I didn't hit all of them, but I've got 2 that are approved, 4 pending credit, 3 returned from approval, and 3 that are still in review. So I'm going to go ahead and save that as a setting. And I'm going to call that orders by status. Okay, now what I'm going to do is drag that off, and I'm going to start setting some filters. And I'm going to say, here's my pending view, and I'm going to save that as pending order inbox. And then I'm going to continue to do the same with the rest of these. If I'm the sales order manager who's responsible for approving orders, I go right to my inbox. I can make that the default view for her or him, and see all of the orders that are pending approval. And I can take a look at the lines that are on there. I can drill into the preview, take a look at those lines. I can right-click on this order, bring up tasks and say enter sales orders, brings it up in context, change that status. That one needs to go to credit, accept, and do a refresh. Now that's off my list, but it's in the credit review now. And so now this could be the credit person's inbox, so they're basically going through, and with, obviously with business alerts, you could set up some alerts and say, hey, you've got a new order that you need to review for credit, and until that thing gets approved, it's in the system ready to go. So that's just a way to show how you can really use Customizer and Business Insights Explorer to provide some additional workflow capabilities into the product. So furthermore, because what I want to do is take you into, let's go into picking sheet printing. and I'm going to print these on plain paper. My UDF exists here, so I can say, hey, I just want approved orders. Select all those and preview. And these will just be the picking sheets that have been approved. Okay? So to take this just a little further, since once again this is a deep dive, I'm going to go into my customer type UDT. So I'm going to go back into user find field and table maintenance. I'm going to take my customer type, and I'm going to add a field here called routing. Make that a 10-byte field with a caption. And I'm going to validate this user-defined field against another user-defined table. So I'm going to OK that, close it down, and I'm going to go into my customer type, and now I've got the routing field here. So what I can do is say, hey, anybody from President's a Club, automatically approved. Anybody from value, automatically credit. And these guys will continue to be pending. And then what happens when you come into customer maintenance, and maybe for demonstration purposes, we'll go ahead and add the field on there so you can see it. So I'm going to Control F9, edit an existing panel here, and I'm going to go ahead and add the routing code. So that's going to be a display-only field, which is fine because I just want to see it because I'm really just doing the description. If I wanted to, I could add the routing code to the customer table, so I could default it in from the customer type and then have the ability to change it at the customer level as well. Okay, so now I want to go back into customer maintenance. There you go. Okay, that concludes this demo. This does not conclude this demo. So to close the loop on this, we actually do want to add that UDF to the customer table. And so what I'll do here is go into Edit Fields to Customer, and I'm going to add the routing, because we do want this to flow from the customer into the sales order. Otherwise, it's just going to take that default from the sales order. And I'm going to source this from a business object. So it's customer maintenance, and my data source is going to be the customer type. And I'm going to take the routing field from that. It's really the customer type user-defined table that we set up. And that's going to map from that field into this routing field on the customer table. Now, it's up to you whether or not you actually allow the end user to change that on customer maintenance. If you do, you'd want to go ahead and validate against the user-defined table, but you can leave it as a display-only field, and it will continue to map into it. So I'm not going to actually add it to the screen as an enterable field, but I will set up that mapping. Go back to the sales order header, and on this routing field that already exists, I want to edit that. And we've got the default value for a new order. But what I want to do is on the sales order business object, because that's where I want to say from the customer type, I'm sorry, the routing, let's see, from the customer number is what I want to do here. I want that routing code to come from the customer. So what that says is, much like in sales order, when I put in a customer number, all the terms code, the address, the salesperson, that comes into the sales order header. Now I want to also take that routing field from the customer and default it into the sales order business object. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that. Okay, so that's done. Now, something you need to be aware of is existing fields that have been set up in customer maintenance. And even though this shows as pending, this is really a display-only field from the routing code that's in the customer type. I'm going to go ahead and change this to A1 temporarily and back to A2, and that'll force that pending to come in. But actually, let's change him to an A1 so that he can automatically be approved. So now if I go back into sales order entry, I set up a new order. The default here is from the default value, a new order. But if I type in the customer now, he's automatically approved. So that's a way that you can take it to the next level of having maybe some rules based on individual customer types that you want them always to be approved, or always to be on credit, or always to be on hold, or whatever you choose to do. Now that does conclude our last bit of bonus feature that I thought might be helpful for you as well. On the sales order lookup inside invoice entry, we can go ahead and customize that. This isn't part of Customizer, this is native in ALE. So I can hit on this custom button here, and I'm going to call this approved order list. And I'm going to make that the default view for here. And I'm going to go ahead and add that routing field. Hit the next button. And on the filter, I'm going to say routing equal to approved. And hit the finish button. And now I've got an ALE lookup of just my approved orders. Now that's not going to stop a user from typing in a non-control over that through ALE, but at least if they're using the lookup button, it'll just present them with a list of approved orders. So I just want to throw that into this demo, and this really does conclude the demo. Thank you.